your host, Diamond D Money 1996. Have a privileged to have two special guests here with us on the podcast. Again, this will be episode 1 of the mental health series, launching in beginning of March. So getting the spring started off right. And so we have Mr. Marquise and Mrs. Taylor out of Chicago, Illinois, part of the You Stuck With Me podcast. They're going to bring a wealth of knowledge in regards to their personal story with gun violence, as well as mental health on the effects of gun violence. And so I'll let them go ahead and introduce themselves.
Ladies first.
Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Poindexter Williams,
And I am Marquise Williams.
and we are the Williamses of the You Stuck With Me podcast. You stuck with me. um, Basically, our podcast is what it says. You're stuck with us. It's basically telling our unorthodox love story, being from Chicago, and also when Marquise was going through treatments, I told him while he was going through this that he stuck with me. I'm not going anywhere, and he better not try to go anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not complaining.
Well, awesome. It's a very blessing and pleasure to have you all on here today. And so, again, like I mentioned in the short introduction, we'll be talking through gun violence and just the different mental aptitudes that gun violence has on individuals in their daily lives. And so before we get started on that, I kind of want to always challenge viewers as they're listening to the podcast and viewing the podcast to look in your own lives. I always say look in the mirror, if you will. Maybe you personally, if you're listening out there, maybe you haven't personally dealt with gun violence, or maybe you haven't had any violence done to you at all. And so, like I said, everybody's story is unique. Not one story is greater or more impactful than the others. So I just want to let all the viewers know that, they have a voice. Your voice matters, your story matters, and I want to empower every viewer out there to have the courage to share their story, no matter what topic or what it may entail. And so, to kind of get started here, why don't you guys give a little backstory on, what makes the topic of gun violence so near and dear to you?
Well, in 2018, we were victims in a mass shooting in Jacksonville, Florida. Prior to that, I received the unfortunate diagnosis of chronic myeloid leukemia. It's a blood cancer. So it kept me away from the public for about a year's time. So once I was cleared to return to being in the public during that, well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. In that time while I was in seclusion, I picked up the talent of playing Madden professionally. So that's how we ended up in Jacksonville. Not to bring it a little bit more current, after I was able to go back in public, we went to our first public Madden tournament, which was Jacksonville, Florida. So it was a 2-day tournament, and the first day was single limbs, and then the second day was the round robin knockout round.
It was the other way around. So the first day was the round robin, and then the second day was single limbs.
I'm sorry, she's right. So between us, I was the only one to advance to the second day, but unfortunately, I was knocked out in the first game. So we were staying around to see who would win the entire thing. She tells me that she's hungry, so we decide that we're going to go to the bar to get something to eat. It was at a pizza bar. So while we were at a pizza bar, just sitting there waiting to be served, we just heard a pop. And everybody's looking around. We're just thinking it's a balloon, but it dawned on us like there are no balloons in the area. And so we heard repeated pop, 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 and that's when we realized it was a shooting. We were probably about 10 feet from the entrance to the entire facility, and we were struggling among the people who were already there to get out of there. That's when we realized it was a shooting. So as we were leaving or trying to get out of there, I just happened to turn around, and she wasn't behind me, but I did hear her scream "bae." So when I looked, I saw her limping, and I went back to grab her, and that's when we made our way to safety.
Oh wow, wow. I'm sorry for that you guys had to go through that. And so, again, this was for the viewers out there. This was a mass shooting during a Madden football tournament. For those of you that don't know what Madden is, it's a high-profile NFL football video game that's exclusively licensed by Electronic Arts Sports. They do have, once you get to a certain level of being competent enough to play, they do have various tournaments around the United States, around the world, for individuals to attend. And so that's just a little backstory on Madden. And so a few questions to kind of go off of that. Like I said, I know you said, you guys were hungry and kind of went to get some pizza from the pizza bar. Um, what was your mindset like once you realized that after you heard the first pop and you realized like, oh, this is actually a gun going off?
Get
Get down,
Yes, get down.
get down, and then when we finally did made it out, so Marquise made it out before me, and I, w- I was like a few inches, no, a few feet away from him. So when I got out, the first thing I was thinking was like, "Where's Marquise?" And I didn't. And when you focusing on get out of harm's way. So when I tried to get up, my ankle was sprained. I couldn't even sustain any weight on it. So I'm trying to get up. I'm trying to make sure no bullets are flying because at this point we don't know if the shooter had made it out from the area that he originally started.
Oh wow, that's definitely, like I said, my condolences to all those that were involved in that, and just a blessing that you guys were able to not only make it out alive, but also live to tell the story. And so, can you guys walk through with the viewers, once you guys kind of made it to safety and re kindled with each other in regards to regroup and a rendezvous, if you will. You know what, you know, what was your mindset then, and like how did you guys proceed after that?
Well, we did end up next door in one of the stalls in the bathroom, and I just remember looking at her. She was in pain with her ankle, so I propped up her ankle. But we were also in a bathroom. This is a bathroom with about like three stalls and the sink, and it's about, give or take, about 12, 13, up to 15 of us in this bathroom. But we're trying to stay low because we don't know what type of gun was being used, if the gun was still going, if it can fly, if bullets can fly through the wall. So I'm looking at her and trying to keep her calm, make sure I'm calm. And I say, hey, we're okay. We're in the bathroom. We're safe. We're just making sure that we keep low because we don't, like I said, we don't know where the bullets are coming from. So we probably were in that bathroom for maybe about a good 30 minutes to an hour before we received help. And
And that was difficult being in a stall. So, like Marquis said, that was three stalls and a sink. And then not only excuse me, not only that we're in this bathroom with other adults, there was also a younger child in there too. So between Marquise helping me getting propped up, we see this little kid in here and he's anxious to get out. Like he doesn't know what's going on. So that was kind of anxious too. And just the thought of we don't know if the shooter is still active. We don't know where the bullets are coming from at this point. And so between the emotions of anxiety of staying alive and then also with me dealing with pain, it was a lot.
Well, so was the bathroom, was that like next to the building, or was
it
it
was
like?
It was a
it was
so
attached to the building.
it was attached to the building. So Jacksonville Landing was just a whole section of like different restaurants and stores. So the exact location we were at a pizzeria who that actually has an adjacent game room. So when we exit out, it was a Mexican restaurant next door. So
Oh
that's
wow,
where the
so it's
bathroom
like
was located.
it's kind of like Tennessee, like the Gatlinburg, like a whole strip, or like a
Yeah,
Florida or a Vegas type thing, like a
yeah,
restaurant
Yes.
strip mall type thing.
Hmm.
yeah.
Oh wow. And so, you know, Once you guys, received help, can you guys walk us through like that initial like evacuation, or like the initial like knowing that, like, when did you guys like walk us through like when you guys went to the bathroom, but also when you guys knew that, hey, you're officially clear to be safe and kind of proceed to go either back to the hotel or back home.
You want me to start it?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So the initial getting into the bathroom, it was just every man for himself. To backtrack a little bit. So when we first was trying to, when we first got out of the pizzeria, we actually tried to find shelter in an elevator, but the elevator was, of course, blocked off. And then it was a representative from EA. He was directing us to go to the restaurant, to the bathroom. But while he's knocking on the door, well, no, let me backtrack a little bit. So we first spotted the restaurant, and at first a worker did open the door, but he closed us out because I don't know if it was
A
a language
language
barrier
barrier.
thing or he was just out of fear. So then that's when the EA representative came, and he saw that I was hurt too. So he knocked on the door, and the worker opened the door again, getting ready to close, and the EA representative was like, "No, no, no! There's an active shooter
Let us
next
in.
next door. Let us in." So that was the whole description of how we got into the bathroom. Now, after, like Marquis said, 30 minutes to like an hour later, an officer actually did come and told us that the coast was clear. So Marquise exited out the stall that we were in and said, "Hey, we have an injured person in here." So that police officer came, and he radioed another officer to come for assistance because he didn't know the severity of my injuries. So after that, they both assisted me to the nearest hospital by ambulance, and then from there, it was just a lot of us was spread out to different hospitals, and then from there, just watching from a hospital bed, just like all the news footage and everything like that. That's what how we found out uh, that the shooter himself, before he took his own life, that two other competitive players had lost their lives while trying to escape.
Now, during the melee, while I was actually going to get a police officer, he actually told me right then and there that people had died. And one competitive player immediately came to my mind because when we left the pizzeria, when we left the room to go get some pizza, he was sitting in immediately in the entrance. And unfortunately, I guessed right, and I didn't want to be right. But another competitor, he just happened to be killed in the crossfire, and then the shooter turned the gun on himself. And what is really scary when we found out about it is not only we were seconds, maybe minutes away from being in the room, we literally walked past him as he was walking in to start the entire shooting. So,
Oh wow.
unfortunately,
So again, like I said, my condolences to those families, and again, prayers to everybody that was involved, including the first responders and officers that were able to help alleviate the situation. And so, let's fast forward to, like, once you recovered from the hospital, what was your mindset, once you guys, received treatment for the sprained ankle and kind of was cleared to go home?
well, during the time we were trying to escape, we actually lost our phones, and I think we both had flip flops on at the time. We both had flip flops on because obviously it's Jacksonville. This is August, and it's still hot outside. So we ended up going back to our Airbnb, which is probably about 10 minutes away, 15 minutes away,
No more than 15 minutes away.
and we tried to mentally collect ourselves, and we have a friend down there who I met through playing Madden, and he was at work at the time. And when he heard about the news, he knew that we were down there for the tournament. And when he saw the news, he went running from every hospital to hospital looking for us. And then when he finally got to our Airbnb, I opened the door. He gave me and my wife the biggest hugs. And then we received, somehow we received notice that we could go back to the area and pick up our stuff.
So to backtrack a little bit, so before the friend, well, our friend came to the Airbnb, so we was able to manage to get a ride back to our Airbnb. So our Airbnb was no more than 15 minutes away from the location of the tournament. So we are trying to find a way to communicate with our friends and family. By this point, it's making national news. One thing that helped us with that was, so I had an Apple Watch at the time, and I don't know if anybody's really familiar with how Apple Watch in the distance from your phone works. So when you're in close proximity of your phone, you could still receive messages and notifications, everything like that. So I'm getting notifications, I'm getting text messages through my watch, and how we was able to get the notification that we can go return to the location to get our cell phones and our personal items was through Facebook.
Because I brought my laptop.
Yeah, because Marquise had brought his laptop, and then when we got there, we was able to retrieve our phones, um, and actually let everybody know in Chicago that we were okay.
And by that time, while we were at the hospital, I was able to call my mom and let her know what happened, because at the time she didn't know what was going on. She was actually back at home working, but she was watching, old TV shows and reruns. And so when I called her and told her what happened, she stopped watching the reruns and she turned on the TV. It was all over the news.
Oh wow, definitely. And so, like I said, definitely blessed that you guys were able to make it out alive, and like I said, with minimum injuries, and was able to get everything back. And so, can you walk to us and the viewers tuning in? Can you guys just walk through the mindset once you return home to Chicago, and then the mental health effects that it had on you guys afterwards?
Well, I'll let you go first.
Okay, well, actually, before we were able to go home, the host of the Airbnb that we were staying in actually they had cameras on their premises, so they saw that the news was outside the house, and they're thinking like, "What's going on?" And so they come and see what's going on, put two and two together, and realize that we were victims of the what happened. And so they were actually very gracious to us, and they actually extended us an extra night just to make sure that we were okay. And we said, we appreciate it, but no, thank you. We have to get back home because our flights were scheduled for that Monday, I believe, Monday or Sunday.
Okay.
So on the way to the airport in Jacksonville, we were being stared at everywhere. I mean, the Uber driver recognized us. Walking through the airport, everyone was staring at us. Um, Once we got on the plane, everyone was staring at us because, oh, I forgot to mention this, but while we were walking back to get our things at Jacksonville Landing, we were approached by the media, and they asked us if we had a comment. And initially, I said I don't have a comment. And then as I started walking away, I started thinking this might be a good time, to say something. Maybe a way we can invoke change. So I made my statements to the media. I told my side story. She told her side of the story. Of course, it went all over the nation. Once we got to the Jacksonville airport, people were staring at us. We were on the plane. People were looking at us. Once we landed in Chicago, people were staring at us. We got in the car and we were on the road. People just happened to look and notice it was us. It went all the way back to it. It happened all the way till we went to church. I think like a week later, and the mental aspect of it was during that time. First of all, it's uncomfortable because people know us for something that was unfortunate, but and this is where the mental part for me became too much to take on. I tried to go back to work. I went back to work too early, so the first day I went back to work, a lot of my coworkers at the time they would ask me, "Was I okay?" Some were calling me a hero, and it was too much because I didn't feel like I was a hero. At the time I had survivor's guilt. So while at work, um, At the time, I was working with students with autism. I went to the bathroom and I broke down and cried. It was too much to bear, and I started texting my wife because she was staying. She was at my house at the time. I was living with my mom because of parts of my recovery. And so I'm doing a text with her and my mom, and I'm letting them know I'm not okay, and I'm breaking down crying, and it was a lot. This went on for about good. I was crying for a good 3 days afterwards.
For me, the mental aspect, it really took a toll on me. So I was staying with Marquise at the time because I'm having a sprained ankle. So I'm not able to drive. I'm not able to put weight on my ankle to even get upstairs to my apartment. So that was an adjustment there. So that was kind of, I don't want to say stressful, but it was kind of like I felt helpless. And then due to that, I was off work for like I'll say between 3 to 5 months. So I can't work. I'm getting calls left and right from even though friends and family or even co-workers were checking on me, it just became overwhelmed. I felt overwhelmed because just like with the news media asking us the same questions about how to, recount what happened, between trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to sustain myself for the next few months without working. And at one point, I was having PTSD because, as we mentioned before, the gunshots sound like balloon pops to us. So every time I would hear a balloon pop or even something simple as bubble wrap, I used to love like popping the bubble wrap every time you get in a package. I couldn't even do that because it would remind me of the gunshots. Um, but I will say that one thing that helped me with that, that's when I decided to go to therapy. And that with along with that, so with going to therapy and talking out my feelings, because also at the same time too, I felt like I just didn't want to talk about what happened anymore. I felt like if I didn't talk about it, it didn't exist. Maybe everybody would leave me alone.
Awesome, awesome. I'm glad you brought that up because for those of you viewing out there that haven't listened to the other episodes, I do tell my story in the childhood trauma series. Again, I'm a survivor. Me and my mother are survivors of domestic violence. Father tried to take our lives when I was 14 years of age. And so, with any trauma or mental health, I always advise individuals to seek what we call higher counsel or seek therapy. The reason I always say that is because one, you want to surround yourself with, it takes a village, y'all. Like I said, the goal of humanity is to be there for each other and to grow as one and become the best version of ourselves. And in order to do that, certain aspects of life, no, there's no perfect person. Everybody needs help in some area of their life, or when tragic events happen, um, you want to be able to seek higher counsel and get help for what you're going through. And so I just want to encourage all the viewers out there, to seek higher counsel, to get, therapy if you need it, or, whatever help that you need. You deserve to be helped. You deserve to heal. You owe it to yourself to heal. Like I said, you want to become the best version of yourself, and the best way to do that is to heal from trauma and heal from any ailments that you may have, whether it be physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, socially, etc. You have that ability to seek a higher counsel. And so, with that being said, um, once you why don't you walk through with the viewers the import that what your opinions are on the um, benefits of therapy?
Well, the first thing that I think both of us would like to say is that we're debunking the theory that therapy doesn't help. Therapy does help, because just talking to someone without judgment, without some type of ulterior motive, definitely helped us, because we realized that because we had gone through this together and we were so tightly connected that we didn't have to feel like we were necessarily going through it alone. There were times where we felt our own emotions, but because we had somebody who was there to relate to us, between, us two, but someone also who was there to just listen and diagnose, and it helped us. It really did help us.
I would say that, in a sense, and I was just talking to Marquise about this a while ago. One thing I'll say that therapy really helped with us in the us together as in a relationship going through a trauma like that. It helped us feel like that we didn't have to have that Superman, Superwoman complex.
Hmm.
Even though that we both went through the trauma together, excuse me, that we went through the trauma together, we didn't it gave us a space that we didn't feel like, oh, I gotta not cry and hold it together so I could be Marquise's rock, or he don't have to feel like that he can't cry or show his emotion because he has to be my rock. So with the therapy session that we have, it just created a safe space that it was okay for us to share those emotions. And I think that's part of the reason why, some individuals may feel some type of way about going to therapy, because they feel like that therapy is a weakness. And I can attest that, before Jacksonville and everything like that, before going to therapy, I felt that if I wanted to, at the time when I wanted to first go to therapy, I thought it was showing a sign of weakness or being afraid to be vulnerable with somebody. But after experiencing that, it created that safe space for me to be okay with my emotions, to say that I'm not okay and I need help.
In our one of our episodes of our podcast, we actually discussed the effects of mental health and why it is okay to let somebody know that you're not okay.
Awesome, awesome. And like I said, again, for the viewers out there, they do own the You Stuck With Me podcast. And so make sure you guys go check that out on, is it Apple, Spotify?
Yes, Apple, Spotify, and we're on YouTube.
Yeah, so definitely, as you're viewing this episode, go ahead and give them a like, follow, and comment and share. And so, with that being said, I know we're talking mostly for this episode about the gun violence. And with that being said, what was your opinion before on gun violence before the event, and then after your event, like even up to today? What are your thoughts and opinions on gun violence and how we can make um, the gun situation better in the United States?
You want to go first, Clay? Okay. My opinion on gun violence before the incident was we don't need military weapons on the streets of America. And I get that we do have the amendment that says that we have the right to protect ourselves, but at what cost is it that we have kids dying on the streets and dying in schools just because of the right to protect ourselves, especially when these guns are being used to commit crimes? Now, that was what my thought was beforehand, and that's one of the statements that I made during that time, and I still stand by that because every time we look up, there's a mass shooting literally every day. I mean, we're looking at what happened in Charleston, we're looking at what happened in Evanston, we're looking at what happened in Michigan, Texas. It, we sit back and watch the rest of the world figure it out. Why can't we?
My thought on gun violence before Jacksonville was that it it's a problem that needs more than a temporary fix. And what I mean by that is, sometimes when it comes to gun violence, we always hear something about some law being passed of like, you have to have this to obtain this weapon, and so on and so forth. But now, after Jacksonville, it really opened my eyes to say, and I've said it when I was being interviewed at the time period, that not one time I have been in Chicago and I feared for my life. Chicago has been known as Chirac, or this murders capital city of the world. but I have not to this point in my life felt unsafe in where I lived at. But it takes for us to go to a different state to fear for our lives and not have to run for safety because someone who was upset about how things didn't go their way decides to pull a gun out. So that just my thoughts then and now are still the same, but also now I feel like okay, maybe maybe now we come together as those who have been victims of gun violence or who have been affected by those. We really need to come together because I honestly believe it's strengthened our numbers to say, hey, this is a problem that needs more than a quick fix. We actually need to get down to the root of it and and find some way to not, because I mean at the end of the day we still do have the right to bear arms, but at least make it more, what's the word I'm looking for, make it less easily accessible for those who don't have the proper documentation or the training to use those,
or the mental capacity,
or the mental, in this case the mental capacity.
because the shooter, in at least in our situation, he was not mentally right, and there was a whole thing about where his father didn't want him to take medication, his mother wanted him to take medication. There's that whole dynamic.
He was sent to live with his father because his mother just didn't know how to give him the proper care that he needed. So, and due to that part, he was not. He had stopped taking his medications, and he was able to bear arms in his father's basement.
Hmm.
Awesome. So was that gun, was it his father's, or was he able like to legally go and purchase that firearm that was used?
From
If you don't mind me
from
asking.
from our understanding, that was legally his. Like he was able to purchase it.
Like he, we won't say his name. We're not going to glorify any shooters, but he literally hopped in his car, came down to the tournament, and brought the gun with bad intentions.
Now to clarify it up a little bit, he was a competitor in the tournament.
Yes.
All of us were including myself. He was a competitor in the tournament. I forgot how far he made it, and he was he was just to himself the whole tournament. He wasn't being sportsmanlike. He was just quiet, and then he lost to one of the more favorable competitors there, and he went away. He went out to his car or had his bag or whatever he had the gun in, came back, and he had in mind who his target was. So he actually did get one of the people. Unfortunately, he did get one of the competitors he was aiming for, but another one, the other one he was actually aiming for, he had already left the tournament and went back to go to take a nap at the hotel.
Awesome, awesome. And so, in you guys' opinion, do you feel that, um, like obviously, when you look back, nobody's perfect. Did they have like a security check, like before? I know, like when I did, like I know, for example, like here in Indy, like the children's hospital, like my son has asthma, so sometimes he was admitted to the hospital for different, like if he was like sometimes when he gets um and like upper respiratory infections, it messes with his asthma. So I know for um the hospital, they had like a security check, like even if you go leave the room and go back to your car. Like I think one time I had forgot the parking pass for them to sign for the voucher, and I had to walk all the way back to my car and come back. There was a security checkpoint where I had to empty my pockets and do the wand. Like even just going right back to my car, it took like 2 minutes. So do you guys have that for that tournament? And do you think like for future just all events they should have that, or how do you guys view that?
Well, at the time, they didn't have a security guard, someone that you would see with, a baton or a police officer with a gun, nothing like that. But I do remember there being someone who would checking bags and see what was in everybody's bag. Now that day for that tournament, I did have a bag, but my bag was one of those string bags that you just put things in when you're walking. And in my string bag, all I had was my uh, wallet, cell phone, and my own personal controller that I bought. That was just the way that Madden did their tournament. So there wasn't a security guard that you would look at and know that, hey, that's a security guard. He's got XYZ on him in case something happens. But that was our first professional tournament. So hearing from other previous players and contestants who competed seasons prior, there were tournaments that there were security guards, armed security guards. So this one, why there wasn't one, we have no idea.
Awesome, awesome. And so, yeah, like I said, any situation, there's things to go over. So, like I said, looks for this specific situation, just like I said, make get together as a community and empower actual change. Even with the laws, like, hey, if you have a certain not mental capacity, hey, you can't even walk into a gun store. I think it should be that. My personal opinion, I think it should be that clear cut. Like, hey, we run like an automatic background check just to even use the range or even go into a gun range and even practice and rent a firearm to shoot. You should have a certain, like, basically you shouldn't be able to touch a gun if you don't have a cert, like if you don't meet the qualifications.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree.
I think I think something has to be done because the laws that they've tried to put on the books or they have put on books aren't working because when you look at the statistics, first of all, I say this: Chicago does get a bad reputation about that, and Chicago's not even one of the most shooting, murder. It's not one of the most murderous cities in the country. It doesn't even come close. But I honestly think what needs to happen is that we need to we need to scrap the gun laws that we do have because they don't work, and we need to do something different because at one point there was literally a mass shooting on average happening in this country every day.
Also correct. And so, with that being said, how has the what you've been through, like regards to like anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc., how's the mental stress that you and PTSD that you got from that event? How has that strengthened your marriage and family life and daily work life? How does that affected that?
Well, when we go out, we're very cautious and we look around to see where the exits are. Now, me being me as her husband, I'm always trying to, if we go out to eat or we're going out to a movie or something, I'm looking for exits. And I want to be the one that can see anything coming from any entrance. So I tell her to duck or protect her. Um, I don't, I don't necessarily feel anything now about that day because we're every day we're becoming so much more far removed. But the memories, everything, they're still clear. Everybody who was there, I still talk to a few of them. Um, but that day, those feelings, they never go away.
Basically, for me, the same thing with Marquise. Always looking for exits. Uh, I'm at a point now, like, of Jacksonville. I was working in a rehab hospital while I worked with gunshot victims and patients of different ailments and illnesses. Since then, I stopped working there to help with the mental health aspect. Um, now, I would say overall I'm more I'm more okay. I'm way much better than I was before. Like I can handle different type of noises and stuff. And just like Marquise, I'm always looking for exits. And now I'm more back into the competitive gaming scene.
Yeah, since then we have been back competing competitively. Actually, before this interview, she was just sitting here playing Madden, and I was watching. Um, Even at that time, I said that if we had to go forward in tournaments and I could sit and compete against my opponent, and there's an armed guard with some kind of rifle standing there next to me, I would be completely fine with that because I know that I could peacefully concentrate on the game if somebody's watching, making sure that the crowd and whoever is around is protected and no one's being put in danger.
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, last thing before we kind of move on to more of the different topic to close out, um, did EA ever reach out to you all or the Madden tournament people?
Yeah, so there's a lot that happened after that. So after that incident, there was a tribute to us that they wanted to honor the victims, and we were out there in LA, and they took good care of us. Obviously, there was a legal aspect to it, but we're not going to get into that part. Um, but since then, they made sure that the community stays strong. They've definitely hurt people, and they're a lot more. They're a lot more personable. But yeah, we still play today. I can't see us when we. I can't see a day when we stop playing.
Awesome, awesome. And so, to kind of close out, can you do you have any like tips or any advice for the viewers out there that are maybe victims of gun violence or have went through similar situations?
The first thing I would say is you're not alone. Second thing I would say is if you need the help and you feel like you need the help, go get some help. Talk to somebody. It is not a weakness. And that unfortunately, we've been receiving the stigma for years that going to therapy is a weakness. It is not because it helps. You can't walk around with all these emotions and feeling like you can't talk to anybody and you having a hard time dealing with them. And that's what we learned, and that's what helped us. And it's helped us to get to the point where we could be married. And you're just like I said, you're not alone.
I would say find a community. I know when when I was in therapy for this particular situation, I stumbled upon different groups, especially on Facebook. So one community that helped me a lot on the gaming side of things, or just creating a safe space for me to open up and get back into gaming, was the Black Girl Gaming group. There's also other groups out there for like families who have been affected by gun violence, either with themselves or family members. I know one of my former coworkers, she actually lost her son to gun violence, and she started a Facebook community to bring awareness to like other situations around the city of gun violence, or how to support those who are in the mourning process or looking for seeking um, therapy. So I just say just find a community that can help support you and build you up to your best potential, and don't be afraid to give back. So if you don't be afraid to give back by telling your story. Now, for a while before the interview, years back, I was through the whole media madness. I would tell Marquise, I this would be the last time I tell this story, because I mean I had this mindset like, who wants to continually hear about violence, about gun violence, or I just had this mindset as I didn't want to feel like I was a charity case. But over time, when I would tell my story, I found out that I wasn't alone, and that it was actually helping others navigate similar situations.
And something else that we learned through this entire ordeal is the power of the media. The first thing that I learned personally was this: if the media is looking for you, they will find ways to find
Oh
you.
yeah.
Because after that, we almost ended up on Good Morning America. Um, we received interview requests from all over the country. Seattle, while we were there in Jacksonville, once we got back home, ABC 7, NBC, CBS, Fox, NPR, they reached out to us. It was a lot of them. So if the media wants to find you, they will.
Awesome, awesome. And so, just to highlight a few things that were key points that they said for our viewers out there listening. One, you're not alone. Like I said, seek higher counsel, find a village of individuals that are like minded and that can help you elevate yourself to the best version of yourself. Also, your story matters. Again, like I opened up with the episode, your story matters. Don't feel like you're like she said a charity case. Don't feel like you're, a burden on anybody. Like I said, your story matters, your voice matters, and your story needs to be heard because it could reach somebody out there that may be going through the may have went through or going through the same ordeal, and they might not have the resources or might not have the motivation to want to tell their story. And so, um, appreciate having you guys on. Before we go, can you tell the viewers how they can find you?
Well, you can find us at our podcast, You Stuck With Me Podcast. That is USTUCKWITME Podcast. You can also find us on our social media handles. Mine is, ironically, M1E underscore one. That is on Instagram and the app formerly known as Twitter.
And you can find me on Instagram and the app formerly known as Twitter under Queen Points. That is PO number one NTZ. Again, that's Queen Points PO number one NTZ.
And you can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you are on Apple, make sure you rate, review, subscribe, and share.
And thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
having
Thank you,
us.
and
And
hope viewers out there have gleaned something from this. Again, like I said, your voice matters, and go ahead and make sure you guys like, follow, comment, subscribe to the Create a Million podcast. This will be the mental first episode of the mental health series, and go ahead and check out YouTube, Spotify, and Apple on the You Stuck With Me podcast as well. Thank you guys.
thank
thank
you.
you.